Oftentimes when I talk about VeChain, people like to say that, oh, it's primary native token called VET. You know, this is kind of like a hopeless project. Sometimes they take a look at that. Even though nothing I say is financial advice, why do sometimes people think that way? Because oftentimes I do talk about, VeChain, and I always say, hypothetically, you know what, maybe go into the price of $1. And they see that, they're like, whoa, that's around a 35x from here. Like what? That's going to take years. Some people may think that way, but here's the thing. This isn't gold, right? This isn't like some random boring stocks. This is not the S&P 500. Could you imagine how long it would take for something like the S&P 500 to do even a 10x? Or better yet, let me use an even better example, right? Could you imagine like how long it would take for something like gold to do a 10x from here, even like a 5x? Could you imagine that? Some people are taking a look at multiple years, like many years, right? So the way you take a look at it is that in the world of cryptocurrencies, it oftentimes doesn't function that way though. Again, just take a look at Bitcoin not too long ago reaching an all-time high. Take a look at how amazing that did. Bitcoin is literally the biggest cryptocurrency out there, and the movement was even that fast. So something like VET, which is way smaller, right, in the grand scheme of things, let's say making big movements, if let's say there's a fully fledged type of altcoin season, which I don't think we're in yet. Now is Bitcoin's time. Eventually it's going to be time for altcoins, in my opinion. But in my, again, perspective, just imagine how fast VET could move. You know what I mean? We saw how fast the VET moved back in 2021. And as of right now, if the altcoin season's even better, if the hype and the attention's even more fantastic, the movement could be a lot more rapid, in my opinion. Now, it's only time will tell. But let's take a look at the idea of $1, right? VET at the price of $1, considering current circulating supply, is a market cap of around $86 billion. Again, around a 35x from here. I don't think this is too ridiculous because imagine as of right now, right? Dogecoin market cap's around 33 billion, give or take, at least at the time of this recording. Now, could you imagine many people out there are saying, oh, Dogecoin could easily do a 3x. Now, if that were to do a 3x, market cap is basically like $100 billion, right? Even if Dogecoin were to do just a 3x from here in terms of market cap, that market cap right there would already be around $14 billion more than what VET would have at the price of $1 considering current circulating supply. So this is just some food for thought. There's no guarantee that this is going to happen. But the way you take a look at it is that VeChain has the right prerequisites. Sometimes when we take like a college class and they want some prerequisites or whatever, this is the way you take a look at it. VeChain is very fantastic. Take a look at the VeChain Thor blockchain. 0 network outages ever since 2018. Rock solid reliability, absolutely fantastic. Again, it's very reliable. It's not the biggest out there. It's not the most famous, not the most interesting, but it's very rock solid reliability, right? VeChain focused on supply chain management, a market that granted is a little bit boring, but not many projects are focused on this. So VeChain pretty much has a dominating presence when it comes to this. And as we all know, historically speaking, usually people move in trends. They don't only just like AI, blockchain gaming, DeFi, NFTs. They don't only just like that, right? Eventually they move on to other sectors and whatever. So I don't see why this couldn't be something that gained a lot of attention. It even gained a lot of attention back in 2021, primarily because of VeChain. No one ever thought about, hey, you know what? Let's hop onto the world of cryptocurrencies to be focused on projects that are focused on supply chain management. I've never heard anyone say that. I've heard people say they're going to believe in cryptos for AI, for blockchain gaming, for DeFi, for NFTs, for, projects that are focused on, let's say, something cool or interesting like meme coins, right? I've seen that happen. I've never seen anyone want to latch onto cryptocurrencies because of supply chain management, And I didn't either, right? I'm not heading into the world of cryptocurrencies just for VeChain. I mean, come on, even though I do like it, eventually I did find my way into VeChain, and I'm glad I did because I think it's a very rock solid project. Not to mention VeChain has partnerships with, allegedly, right, or has had partnerships or maybe even ongoing, whatever, with giants like PricewaterhouseCoopers, Deloitte, BMW, H&M, Louis Vuitton, Moet Hennessy, otherwise known as LVMH, and also the government of Cyprus. That's just to name a few. So when I take a look at something like VeChain, this is how amazing it is. Not to mention, right, VeChain, the deal they had with PowerSlap, Dana White, PowerSlap, right? Also Dana White with the UFC. Take a look at what VeChain is doing with these like Dana White type of companies, right? Companies that are kind of like linked to Dana White. This is how amazing VeChain is. Take a look at what Hedera is doing with like Karate Combat. it seems like a lot of projects out there are beginning to kind of move on towards these, like, sort of like boxing type of style, type of sports. This is the way you take a look at it. So I do like the way in which VeChain is heading because, again, Crypto.com, we see what they did with, like, sports teams, also what they did with the UFC and whatnot. So I like the way VeChain is heading. It shows that the team is always thinking of new things, right? Following the market, following the trends. And I do like that. We often don't really see this when it comes to a quote unquote kind of like boring project, which VeChain in the grand scheme of things is kind of boring in my opinion. Doesn't mean I don't like it, but it's not really viewed as like a meme coin where it's trying to advertise and whatnot, right? So the way I view it is that, wow, this is very amazing to see this, a project that not only cares, right, about institutional adoption, not only cares about the fundamentals, but also cares about the retail side of things. This is very amazing to me. It's such a no-brainer for me. Now, when it comes to VeChain, of course, VET is the primary native token, but there's something else called VTHO, which is basically used for gas fees or whatever. So that's interesting as well, and I do like that, but I'm focusing on VET here because I think that's the primary thing that people mainly focus on. But I'm just saying, when it comes to something like VET, the idea of $1 doesn't seem too bad to me with the way the markets are heading as of right now, with the way Bitcoin is doing. I do like what I'm seeing. And just think about this. I get it. Sometimes it may not be that easy to hold altcoins. Now, let me explain why. Because some people out there, I know they're only just holding Bitcoin, right? So if they've been holding Bitcoin for quite a while, it is pretty much hypothetically in most cases a set thing that, when Bitcoin was at its all-time high, they're in profit, right? And the majority of people at that point are either in profit, they either bought at the all-time high, or maybe they bought slightly above that because of some random exchanges or whatever, right? But generally speaking, they're doing very well. If let's say Bitcoin was at the all-time high not too long ago. So then they may be taking a look at people who are holding altcoins and they're saying, yeah, sure, some of your altcoins did well, but your other altcoins are not doing that well. And they're down by a lot. So even the gains that are made up sometimes kind of like just break evens or maybe not even, right? Or maybe still way at a loss. So they may be taking a look at that and saying, wow, take a look at us, holding Bitcoin, we're in profit and all this. Take a look at someone who's only holding altcoins, either at a loss or maybe even at a best case scenario, in some cases break even, or maybe even at a profit. We'll have to wait and see depending on the case, right? But I'm just saying generally speaking. So then let's say someone who's holding altcoins, they may feel like, oh man, like, maybe we should get into Bitcoin and all this type of stuff. Well, I'm not that type of person because the way I view it is that why would I FOMO into Bitcoin right now? Makes no sense. Because imagine if Bitcoin went to the price of $300,000. That's as a best case scenario, slightly under a 3x for Bitcoin. For VET to do a 3x, it doesn't need to do that much, right? The market cap is way lower. So if I'm looking for hypothetical upside, Bitcoin or VET, hands down, I think it's going to be VET for me. Now, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not telling anyone to buy VET, but this is just my point of view, and $1 wouldn't surprise me whatsoever when it comes to VET. And make sure to subscribe if you gain value from this video. I'd greatly appreciate it. It's Vanilla the Captain, and I'll catch y'all on the next one. I'm out. Peace. Bye.